Well, welcome. This is Baltimore County Campaign for Liberty. My name is Larry Manross, and is anybody here first time ever come? Okay, right. So everybody here has been here before. You know what Campaign for Liberty is all about. I'm going to skip that portion. We're going to keep this meeting concise. We've got some really good stuff in it, so I'm going to keep it a little bit more relaxed than usual since it's a little bit smaller crowd. I might even open up for some dialogue to try to be more engaging. Just a reminder, we meet at Chili's after the meeting, and we just kind of hang out and talk. So it's kind of an extension of the meeting. We can dive into maybe some more controversial issues that we don't necessarily discuss from up front. I'm going to do a little segment that I call headliners. I didn't put it on the agenda at your seat, but this is something I enjoy doing just because the mainstream media really doesn't cover much news anymore. They're kind of turned into a propaganda machine, and frankly that frustrates me. So I try to dig around and comb the internet for some juicy stuff and throw it out there just to let you know some other things that may be happening. The U.S. economy is the least entrepreneurial in decades. That's not a shock. The NYPD was sued for raiding a dead man's apartment at least 12 times trying to arrest him.
Over how many years? 7 years?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Like, good use of taxpayer dollars right there. The Pentagon acknowledged that we made the Afghan corruption worse. That's from the Pentagon. The drug cocktail in U.S. executions has been deemed too cruel for animals. Blood and Treasure is the title. The U.S. Defense Chief pushes for global military engagement. That's scary. Global. Yes. Senators are given access to the doc authorizing the drone killing of Americans. I have another one down here later that touches on that too. The new law expands the IRS surveillance on Americans overseas. John Kerry, rejects congressional subpoena over Benghazi. The White House identity ecosystem spurs suspicion of a national ID registry. So this is an ecosystem that they're calling an identity ecosystem online that basically is an ID registry, like driver's license for web traffic. So they can follow every individual and where they go and what sites they go. $350,000 government drone, components of a drone, were mistakenly sent to a Massachusetts college student. Shipped to the wrong address. The Obama administration offers $27 million in additional help for Syrian rebels. Sober woman arrested for DUI after the deputy crashes her into her car. You hear about that?
Yeah.
Crazy. This one's great. Nearly 102 million working-age Americans are jobless. That's like a third of the population of our country are jobless. Germany not satisfied with U.S. assurances over NSA spying. There's a shocker. 3 drunk cops shot at people this weekend in New York City. Great place to live. American military gets access to upwards of 5 Filipino bases. I don't know if you heard about that, but they passed a new law that basically gives the U.S. military the authority to come occupy, U.S. or Filipino military bases, which is scary also because that's just strategically located right over where we don't want to be. Fighting income equality. Obama-Biden vacation tab reaches $40 million. He's for the under 30. Supreme Court refuses to stop indefinite detention of Americans under the National Defense Authorization Act. They didn't uphold our rights. Republican senators introduced bill containing harsher sanctions against Russia. Just goes to show the problems are on both sides. Georgia to demand drug tests for welfare recipients.
Can we comment on that?
What?
Can we comment on that?
Sure.
Okay.
We'll make things
Now
happen.
you're saying Russia is equally to blame because I think they're wholly to blame.
No. Republican senators endorsed a bill containing harsher sanctions for Russia. My
Right.
point is, it's both sides that are
Oh, Republicans.
opposing, sanctions or fighting for things.
How do you feel about the whole, the Chechen Russian?
I haven't dug into the details too much, so to really say like where I stand personally, but where I stand politically is that it's none of our business. Georgia to demand, oh, I said that. I'm going to actually come back to that in a little bit. The Georgia demand drug test for welfare recipients. FBI may put alleged anonymous member behind bars for 440 years. So I find that's interesting because anonymous member is a hacker, right? An online hacker. He gets charged for 440 years. But the NSA does this all the time. And they're going,
That's what happens when you
I think
volunteer.
that's great.
That's what happens when you volunteer.
The same guy, if he was working for the government, would be like promoted. He's
Probably keep the sentence.
He's like thrown in jail for 440 years. He just made the wrong career choice. What's that?
Why is it 440 years?
It was like 44 counts of something, and it was like 10-year minimum per count. That's how it got to 440 years. Government starts testing online ID program. That's linked back to the one I mentioned earlier. Florida man arrested for filming another arrest. Scary.
That's just not right.
Pennsylvania widow who lost a $280,000 house over a $6.30 tax debt loses their people.
Real quick, the arrest for filming the other arrest was for obstruction
Obstruction of justice.
The arrest was
Disclosure of drone strike victims dropped from Senate bill. Now this is the one I mentioned earlier. So the document that they were supposed to get to expose like who got killed, all of a sudden there was a backroom deal and that got dropped from the bill, so now they don't have to expose it. So, crazy stuff. All right, next I want to go into something that I'm passionate about. That's what I call principled governance. And this is what just drives me up the wall. And I tried to, I don't know if anybody was here the night I had someone stand up and I gave them a gun and I was given an illustration of power, of what government was. Basically the illustration was, name what government is in one word. And everybody threw out a bunch of different words, but the word I was looking for was force. That's what government is. So I brought in a little plastic squirt gun and I gave it to somebody and I stood up and said, okay, they represent government and they hold the gun and that's representative force. So then, what I really wanted to do if I had more time was divide the room into like two sides and then say, okay, everybody's going to be trying to lobby to get one of their people to represent this person who's holding the gun. And that's really what we have today, is we have all these different special interest groups and people jockeying for this power. But what the problem is the issue is that they should be giving the gun back to the people. Like, that's the problem. And that's what I see as principled governance. It's not, it doesn't matter whether that guy is doing what I believe in or what you believe in. The fact of the matter is that guy shouldn't be having the gun. Like, the government should not have that authority. And so I want to go back to the Georgia demands drug test for welfare recipients. Some people may think, that sounds like a great idea. If we're going to give them money, doggone it, they shouldn't be blowing it on drugs. That is not a principled governance approach.
That's not right.
The questions you have to ask yourself is, one, should the government be stealing money from some people and giving it to others? No. Okay? The next question is, should the government be able to dictate what you can do to your own body? New York City banned soft drinks over 20 ounces. It's ridiculous. But in principle, it is no different than criminalizing drug abuse. Drug abuse
Your
is a problem.
children, you want them to behave a certain way. So if you're giving them money, supporting them, can't you say you may or may not do certain things?
It's your
The
children.
government is our parents now?
Well, you're providing life, you're providing a.
You can't confuse government and parent.
I mean, the problem is the welfare state.
That's one problem. There's many problems.
Here, that's a problem.
No,
So
there's
you
many
should,
problems.
we should have no controls over people if we're giving them money.
But I'm being
No,
forced to
no,
give
no.
that money.
There's two problems. You don't. See, and I had this argument with my father, which just scares me because he actually was in semi-support of increasing the minimum wage. And he said because you have all these things that are driving cost of living up with the feds printing money and the poor people that are only making minimum wage can't afford to buy goods and services, so we should enforce minimum wage. It sounds good, but that's a Band-Aid to the problem. And what we have are continual unintended consequences when you continually Band-Aid the problem. If you don't approach an issue from a principled standpoint, you will always have unintended consequences, like minimum wage. We had Major in here last month to talk about the minimum wage. It always leads to higher unemployment, and it hurts the very people that you're trying to help the most, because it makes them unemployable. And then the people that are actually willing to work for $6 an hour and be happily to do it aren't allowed to, because the government says that you're involved in it in exchange. So what's the principle of that? Should the government be able to dictate the terms of two independent parties' negotiation?
No.
No. So why are there minimum wage laws? Because that's exactly what that is.
Back to the welfare and drugs. In Florida, they passed the law, and they found that less than 1% of welfare recipients were actually taking drugs. All it really did was create a welfare state. Because now you have companies that are testing the drugs, they're getting paid a lot of money, so the costs actually went up dramatically
Right.
For welfare money in total, because you have to pay for this testing.
Right.
Take
The government
five
owned the-
or six companies that are doing this testing, the buddies of whoever,
Yeah.
and you're just channeling money to them, and it's all a joke.
Can you believe the 1 or 2%? I've heard 2%. Can you believe
Do I
that
believe that? Yes, I
2%?
do.
Wait.
I don't think people take welfare money to watch my
We
drugs.
can look at examples.
I don't either.
And, people get bogged down into that, right? We can look at facts and we can go out and find studies. That doesn't matter. I don't care what the stats say. It comes down to principled governance. It is not the role of government to give people stuff. And it is not the role of government to tell you what you can and not can do to your own body.
But
The
they're already
only
giving
role,
them.
the only ethical, moral role of government is the collective defense of the individual's natural right. That's it. That's the extent of it. As soon as you go outside of that small window, you open it up to lobbyists, power seekers, people trying to gain control of the party. And it just leads down the road of the exact same road we've gone down. And that's what's
Government's
happening.
already forced your money from you.
Right.
They can do what they want with it. You just lost.
Now, it's unprincipled to have a welfare state, according to us. Now, however, if it's going to happen, there's nothing we can do about it. And I'm just playing devil's advocate. Actually, I don't know how I feel about this, but should we not have a say
No.
in the way that these people are spending their money?
You've yielded
So
the
now
principle.
you start here,
Yeah,
what
does it mean?
Yep.
Where does it end?
Elizabeth?
Alcohol.
Because once you take charge,
Maryland proposed the same thing this year, I think it was Colbert, who proposed it, and Article 26 of the Declaration of Rights says research can be without my consent, end of story. I mean, it is your natural right to be secure in your person, it is restated in our Declaration of Rights, and that's it.
But all the rules are being broken anyway.
So that's okay.
Yeah, but that doesn't
Well,
mean.
why
doesn't
should
make
we
it
break
right.
them if they break them?
That's an
Then you know
unprincipled
better.
approach. We'll never win that one.
that's right.
That's maybe the only way we can win.
Well, then use that same argument for gun control.
You just want what you want, you don't care what they want. That's not the way to do it. Let's follow the Constitution. What's wrong with that?
Well, if they're not following the Constitution,
Then we have to
then
force
if
them
we
to follow the
follow the
Constitution.
Constitution, we're at a loss.
So you want anarchy, totally.
Well, yeah.
No, I want to be able to beat these people.
Well,
Only on the issues that you want, but when they want to beat you, they have the same justification that you do.
But they do it all the time. We see it every day. They're always, forcing themselves.
we talk about
That's my argument.
the whole, let's take a step back
Every
here.
day.
Scott.
We lose liberties every day.
We do. We lose liberties every day, but the tide is turning. Liberty is rising. And the more they steal, the more liberties that they steal from individuals, the more individuals will wake up and go, you know what? We're not free. I thought we were free. There are millions of people out there that still operate under the illusion that we live in a free country. It is not free. And more people are waking up to that. And how do we do it? The beautiful part about it is the Constitution is still the law of the land. As much as they abuse it and ignore it, it is still the law of the land. And if we can take over, and I've mentioned this so many times here from this exact spot, that if we can take over the local government, we can force the state government to check. And if we can force the state government to check, we can force, and we take it over, then we can force the federal government to check. And that's the reality of it. That's what the framers did. They gave the authority, they delegated, they left all the authority at the most local level. And they only delegated certain authorities to each level of government above. That's what the constitutions of the states are. That's what the Constitution of the United States is. So we are so bogged down in all the federal issues that happen in this country. We are not going to make an impact at the federal level anytime soon. That's the reality of it. It's sad, but it's the truth. But we absolutely can make an impact on the local level. Huge impacts on the local level. We need more people involved in local level politics. We need them running for Republican Central Committee, Democratic Central Committee. These central committees are the backbone of the parties in the state. These committees then can get behind and endorse particular candidates. What candidates? Ones that actually believe in principled governance founded on liberty. Right now, we don't have hardly anybody in any of these organizations at the local level participating. That's the problem. Because guess where U.S. congressmen come from? The minor leagues. You know what the minor leagues are? State level. And where do these state level congressmen and senators come from? The minor leagues, which is county level governments. I mean, this is just like baseball. That's the reality of it. Very few go right from nobody to presidential candidate. He was a senator. Before that, he was involved in politics his entire life.
Well, that's George Bush.
What's that?
When you do the puppeteering at the presidential level, it's a whole different process.
Yeah, that is a whole different process. So the point is, and I hope I make it here, get involved in local politics. One way or the other, just get involved, because we need people that are like-minded, that believe in principled government, involved in politics. Not just here, you know, part of this is being an activist. And what we do as activists is we try to connect the legislative season to the electoral season. And John's going to talk about this in a little bit, so I'm not going to steal his thunder. But that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to hold these guys accountable for bad political behavior. And we're trying to get the people that we want in office by notifying the constituents. The mainstream media doesn't even address local politics, ever. They're focused on national and global stuff. We can't touch that. We need to start focusing on local stuff. So, if nothing else, focus locally and get involved. I had a couple other issues that I wanted to bring up in this principal governance thing, but I don't want to take too much time because I was trying to keep this concise up here. Remember? I don't know, but some of you guys probably received mailers from elected officials. Some of these are humorous. I'm not going to go, I brought like 4 of them, but I'm just going to touch on one. This is, I'm not going to bash this guy by name, but I received one, and this was his leadership has resulted in list on his own literature. The buying and renovation of the Hereford Library building. Now this is my library, this is right like 2 miles from my house. Sounds great, doesn't it? Buying and renovating. Is that what I define government to be? Is any of that part of as owning property? As buying, spending our money on stuff? No, this is actually a growth of government. Is it not a growth of government if the government goes out and buys more private property? So he's advancing that one of his, medals of honor from his term in office is purchasing private property and turning it public.
Republican?
Yes,
What race?
county council.
I was gonna say.
Uh, Advancing a $51 million renovation in addition to the high school. Every one of these points was spending our money. Are you kidding me? This is not principled governance. Principled governance would be trying to find ways to take public property and put it back into private, put it back in your hands. Cutting taxes, reducing the size of government. This is none of that stuff. And it sounds nice. It sounds frilly. It fools a lot of people. But you got to look at it from a principled perspective. Is it increasing the size of government or decreasing? Is he increasing taxes or decreasing taxes? There's a few more, but I'll skip over those. I'm going to get on to our next segment, which Well, before I do that, I have to hand out the tax cap. Unlike the Federal Reserve, we just can't print money out of thin air whenever we need it. So we have to ask for donations. This money goes toward printing literature, paying for an email account that we spam you with, stuff like that. The next up, we have one of our own. Patrick Kniesler is going to come up and talk about one of my favorite books, The Law by Frederick Bastiat, and apply it to something current. So, Patrick?
Hello. I'd just like to sample some of Bastiat from the end of the law, as we talk about the end of the legislative season. He's going out there and he says that the solution to the problems of human relationships is to be found in liberty. And does not experience prove this? We should follow along with ideas in our own state. Look at the entire world. Which countries contain the most peaceful, the most moral, and the happiest people? Those people are found in the countries where the law least interferes with private affairs, where government is least felt, where the individual has the greatest scope and free opinion, the greatest influence, where administrative powers are the fewest, the simplest, where the taxes are the lightest, the most nearly equal, where popular discontent the least excited and the least justifiable, where individuals and groups most actively assume their responsibilities, and consequently, where the morals of admittedly imperfect human beings are constantly improving, where trade, assemblies, and associations are the least restricted. You even have the headline about that Virginia County that's restricting some associations on private properties to 3 times per 45 days to 49 people.
North,
The parts. Where labor, capital, and population suffer the fewest forced displacements, and where mankind most nearly follows its own natural inclinations. In short, the happiest, most moral, and most peaceful people are those who are most nearly follow this principle. Although mankind is not perfect, still, all hope rests upon the free and voluntary actions of persons within the limits of right. Law or force is to be used for nothing except the administration of justice according to universal human truths. Principle. So, what do we have? We have leadership, right? That does things with our money. This must be said. There are too many great men in the world, legislators, organizers, community organizers, do-gooders, leaders of the people, fathers of nations, and so on and so on. Too many persons place themselves above mankind. They make a career of organizing it, patronizing it, and ruling it. They lead us into ruin. And now that the legislators and do-gooders so futilely inflicted so many systems upon society, may they finally end where they should have begun. Hopefully we can show them what they've begun. And may they reject all systems and try liberty. For liberty is an acknowledgement of faith in God and His works. And so, as we look back this year and see how our legislators continually repress our liberties in all these different ways, associations, and just a myriad of different ways that you can look at, the ways we can act, the ways that those actions can be restricted. Hopefully we can look forward and see that we can show them the right way to do things, or replace them and do the right things ourselves. Live by that example. Someone had a great idea, Mark. If you haven't bought a copy of the law, if you haven't read the law yet, or even if you haven't read Economics in One Lesson yet, 3 copies are available online. We have physical copies, and I use my physical copy a lot. You know, like the smell of books and stuff like that. But if you put your email on here, we can email you links to get free PDFs, and then you can read them wherever you want. All right? Anybody know what this?
All right. Jumped ahead of me. I thought Mark was going to do that sign. All right. Next up, we got the main event which is the General Assembly wrap-up. I personally am looking forward to this because I'd like to know all the stuff I missed as these guys were scheming in back rooms in Annapolis. So the first part of this, we broke this into two parts. We've got John Lurch, one of our own, coming up. He's also involved in Maryland Legislative Watch. He's going to talk about a couple bills in particular that he was tracking, along with understanding a little bit more about our activism and what the role of organizations like ours are. So, John?
Hi, thanks for coming out, everybody. Like Larry said, we're going to break this down into two parts, and Elizabeth is going to, and Bruce are going to do a little bit more nuts and bolts stuff and give you the numbers, give you the votes and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to kind of talk about what Larry had talked about, we touched on briefly, which was the activism part. There was an awful lot of bills passed this year and an awful lot of legislation proposed. I don't think, I can probably say pretty fairly that none of it was to advance liberty. I really don't think you pass any legislation that gives you liberty. I know Delegate Mike Schmiegel tried to introduce some bills that were liberty bills. They failed. Basically, in Maryland, they're going to fail because we don't have the number of people who are liberty activists and we don't have the number of people who are liberty representatives. And in General Assembly, we're going to pass these bills. So it's kind of a futile effort. It's more or less just, I guess, a feel-good effort to put some bill out there and make you think that you're being represented by someone who's really going to fight for you. Maybe he put a bill out, maybe it was a good bill, but as far as backers, not many.
I'm going to jump in here for a second.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, this is unplanned. A lot of times we push for a bill that we know is going to fail, and it serves a purpose. It isn't completely futile to put a bill forward that is going to fail for a couple reasons. We've had a bill come out in several sessions in a row, and every session we've gained votes. So that's how you win. You know, you noticed even on the national level, Obama will stick a bill in and he'll try to get the votes and it'll fail, but he didn't give up on it. He's going to bring it back later when he can twist enough arms. It's no different for a liberty bill. The other benefit of it is, in addition to increasing those votes every time, is we can use that as ammunition to beat the tar out of the people that voted wrong in the season, the electoral season. So, you know, even though it was a bill and it may have gone down in flames, it had a purpose. And that purpose is to give us the ammunition that we needed to start hurting these politicians that voted for it. So it's never a lost cause. You know, you can look at it as, oh, we put this great bill forward and lost, let's all lick our wounds and go back home because this is pointless. We're just going to live in a statist environment for the rest of our lives. That's not true. The liberty movement is advancing. We can win. It's a marathon and not a sprint. So keep that in mind.
Thank you. And I did want to touch on Larry's bill because there was more I had to go on this.
Oh.
Actually, one of the things I was going to say that there is some legislation that they do put forward, and I don't want to make it sound all doom and gloom, but there's some legislation they put forward that is specifically what Larry said, to count votes and to see where people stand so we can come back later and beat them up or praise them or whatever. The one thing that's kind of funny, two things I want to pick from the news site. One was a recent story, Dan Roderick's, the great columnist for the Baltimore Sun, that he was calling the Maryland legislation this year in the General Assembly dinos, Democrats in name only. They did not go far enough in taking liberty and taking our tax money and passing tyrannical legislation. So Dan Roberts thinks that they did not go far enough in Annapolis this year. He thought that O'Malley did a bad job this year. So I really don't know what are the laws that, you know, we don't have any Second Amendment rights. I don't know.
Money in your pocket?
We still have money in our pocket. Yeah, we still change. So I really don't know what else they can do, but we still have a few pennies rolling around in our pocket. So I guess that was his point on that. The one thing, and this is really our training, that anybody's ever been in our training before with Kirk Shelley or FACL, any of the other trainers, that we try to take the legislative season and tie that to the election season. And right now, we are in election season. You see the signs outside here, you see all the signs on the highway. These guys are out there, they want your votes. And now's the time for you to get out there and go to the town halls, go to these election things, and let them know, and ask them questions, ask them hard questions, and see where they stand. And talk to people and let other people know about it. Because that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be getting out, find this information, giving it out to the people who don't come to these meetings so they can know and educate them a little bit. The one thing I want to say, Common Core was passed this year in Maryland General Assembly, you know, so We got Common Core, they're trying to repeal it, lots of luck on that. Minimum wage is passed, even though it won't take effect till 2018, I think. The final top tier, whatever arbitrary number they set. The one thing I did want to get today was that John Carden, who's running for Attorney General, missed 75% of his committee votes. I don't know if anybody knows, that is where the work is really done in Annapolis in the committees. The floor votes are one thing, but the committees are really where the work is done in Annapolis. And that's why really what Maryland Legislative Watch does is really important, because that goes right to the committees and stops these bills from coming out. Or, you know, maybe doesn't stop them, like Larry said, that we can whittle them down a little bit. But that is really 75%. This guy's running for Attorney General. So he missed 3 out of every 4 votes on the committee level. That's, yeah, I mean, if I was one of his people going to one of his campaign events, I'd be asking him, hey, dude, you want my vote? You didn't even show up for your own votes.
What's
So,
the average percentage of voting per?
per delegate?
Yeah.
And the committee.
I would say there's delegates who miss votes for certain reasons. I would say probably no more than 10% would be, if you miss more than 10%, I don't know why you're even there. So, the one thing I do want to get, and I think maybe Elizabeth is going to touch on this later, but as of probably about 60 days or 70 days into the 90-day General Assembly this year, 19 delegates had voted 100% of the time. Oh, okay.
Turned out to be 22.
Okay, I'm sorry, 22 delegates. Okay, 22 delegates had voted 100% of the time with O'Malley and Speaker Bush in the House of Delegates. So you have 141 delegates and you have 22 of them. It's about what, 1/7, something like that? About 1/7 or just rubber stamps.
These are over 1,000 votes.
Thousands and thousands of votes. And really, to be honest with you, if these people are voting 100% of the time, they're taking 90 days of your money for food, lodging, and gas allowance. If they're going to be a rubber stamp, maybe it's great, you can be a champion of environmental cause and just stay home. Don't burn gas, don't waste the hotel room, and don't waste our money on food, and just stay home and mail your vote in, because that's all they're doing.
How many of the 22 were, what's the breakdown, Republican, Democrat?
I would probably say,
100%.
I would say it's 100% Democrat,
It is.
because they voted with Bush, it has to be.
We published it today.
So, anyway, the other thing, really, this is one of the big issues I want to talk about. 2 issues. One, Patrick McGrady covered last February last month, 2 months ago when he was here, was the bill from McDermott that was the hidden compartment bill, I believe HB 52. And I went out and personally put that information out on Facebook. Delegate McDermott did not take a liking to that, and about 3 hours after I publicly called him out on Facebook, he contacted me via Facebook and was, you know, oh, this, you know, you don't know this, you don't know this, and this is, well, I'm like, okay, well, then explain to me. Did do a very good job explaining it. Being on Facebook, having about 1,500 friends, about 20 or 30 people jumped all over him. His constituents were hopping mad at him for this. He proposed this bill by himself, had no backers, no other co-sponsors. Basically, it was a bill that said if you had a hidden compartment in your car and you were pulled over by state police that was guilty of, that was a felony charge. So, having said that, the heat that he took from that one little action I did, he withdrew the bill. He said he did. It took a little while for him to withdraw it. It was also co-sponsored in the Senate, and both the sponsors of this bill went to Joe Valerio, I believe, and said, Joe, don't let this bill come out, please. We're getting beat to death on this bill. So out of the 2,700 bills, I'm going to take credit for stopping one of them. And just go, it just goes to show you, really, when these people are called out on one little bill like this, when the light is shown on them, you really see how these people run and hide, because they do not like the spotlight. They don't like the focus being thrown on them.
How did you know about that bill?
I found out from that bill from a friend of mine.
Hey, John?
Yes.
Did you post that in a group or just on your personal wall?
I just put it on my wall, Kyle.
And you got a response from him off your
He
wall?
tagged him. He tagged him.
Oh, you.
I'm sorry, I tagged him in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I posted it on my wall, I tagged him, and then next thing I know, it was a torrential downpour of people just beating him up on it.
Wow, nice.
Nobody took his side, I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
And this went
Ridiculous
on
stuff.
for 7 hours on Facebook, and he was even crying on Facebook. I was in hearings all day today. I'm like, dude, I had people work 12 hours in a warehouse today. They're not crying about it.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I was at hearings all night, and I didn't know this was happening. And I'm like,
That's all
now
they
you know.
That's all they care about is public opinion.
So we had him go until 4 in the morning from like an 8 o'clock post.
Yeah.
So made him earn his pay that night. But, okay, now the meat of the subject I want to talk about, the most important thing I'm going to turn over to Elizabeth, is the bill that Larry referenced, and what we're really talking about is why we're here and what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. HB 1513, does anybody not know what that was about? Everybody knows what that was about? HB 1513, about Pat McDonough and trying to take over the Central Committee of Harford County. Okay. As Larry said, the way that we can be effective, we can't be effective on a national level, we can't really take too much on a national or global level, but on a state level, on a local level, we can be really effective. And what this bill, 1513, was going to do, was going to allow the delegates from Baltimore County, Pat McDonough, Kathy Shalaga, to take seats on the Harford County Central Committee, and to remove or replace people as they saw fit and vote as they saw fit on bills that come before Central Committee matters. And it was probably one of the most egregious things I've ever seen as a power grab of any party in Maryland whatsoever. And for these people who we're putting down there thinking that they're fighting, that they're on our side, it's probably one of the worst pieces of legislation I saw this whole General Assembly. Having said that, they took so much heat from it that they stopped answering their phones. The Harford County and Baltimore County delegation stopped answering their phones, wouldn't respond by email. Their staffers were just giving me like these answers and then hanging up. And that bill was tabled this year, put in a drawer. Having said that, it's an election year. I would expect that bill maybe to come back next year. So just be aware of this. Let you know that HB 1513 is not a dead bill. It can still come back, and these people did not introduce this bill for no reason.
The bill would
Good
have effectively taken, you could remove somebody from office who was elected. So they would have actually say, we elected, John to the Central Committee, he's a Liberty guy. They can come and say, no, we don't like him, he's gone.
And this was the Harford
Harford
County
County.
delegation Republicans.
I'm sorry, I didn't clarify. The Republican Central Committee of Harford County, that these two, that actually there was 7 delegates total, but 2 lived in Baltimore County, and by just the fact of geographical representation should have no say as what goes on in Harford County, but yet they still want to insert themselves in that process. And the other thing, I just want to let you know, there's 12 seats on the Central Committee of Harford County. If there was only 5 people running, I could say, hey, well, you would not have 7 delegates. Yeah, you guys can get on there just so we can have the 12 seats. There's actually about 30 people running for those 12 seats. So it's not like there's no interest. There's interest there for people to get on there. The delegates wanted to take the power grab. And I mean, you can surmise everything you want because of the Liberty movement in Harford County has really been stepping up and getting active. That's one of the reasons that they wanted to do this. John?
John, I'm sorry,
That's fine.
my ignorance, this is why I come here every morning, but why and how, and I don't know much about the Central Committee, how is it that the Central Committee of Harford County needs a bill passed in Annapolis? Why do people in Howard County or Prince George's County, like it's not, are there not bylaws within Harford County Central Committee that it's their business?
Yes.
I mean, were they trying to take the power and then they were going to do it all over? I'm kind of lost as to why.
Well, I just give you some
How
background,
it
John.
became-
Here, the final bill for the for Central Committee for people following was, I believe, February 25th for following for Central Committee. And they introduced emergency legislation on February 27th or 28th, early in the morning, after they saw that so many people from the Liberty movement in Harford County were stepping up to run for Central Committee.
Right.
So this was emergency legislation they're going to try to push through.
They were changing.
Why is there legislation over the Central Committee of Hartford County?
There really
My
is, it's
disconnect.
election law. They're trying to change the
Oh.
election law of Maryland, which is HB 1513,
Okay.
was a modification to the election law
Of Harford
of
County.
Harford County.
Okay.
But there are, which is a great point, there are bylaws that govern the Republican Party in Harford County. And they were basically usurping the authority of those bylaws.
So they were gonna have
By-
Democrats even voting
You
on.
have to understand.
No, it's Republicans only.
Well, no, on the bill.
Oh, I'm sorry, on the
So
bill.
that's where I'm
Oh, on the
looking,
bill.
like,
Yes.
isn't this a Republican issue? Like, why are we drawing Democrats from,
National was actually investigating whether or not this was even illegal,
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
the legality of it.
And when you say would Democrats be voting on that, I meant, yes, they would be. In the General Assembly, they actually would be. All 188 people would be voting on this, because if the bill would have gone through, if it wouldn't have been tabled, or, stuck in a drawer, it would have gone to a General Assembly, it would have been voted on.
And could the Democrats remove anyone they wanted to as well?
No.
No.
They could only approve
No.
the bill.
But having said that, when one county kind of proposes a bill, it's kind of like a gentleman's agreement that the other counties just all vote for it, and that's the way it's been done for years and years, forever.
John, one of the things that the state has control over counties is that depending on the form of government each county has, there's 3 different types that are allowed in Maryland. And depending on the type that the county has, it's why certain things in certain counties need to be approved at the state level.
Okay.
It's an absurd concept that a
Yeah,
county
that's where I
can't
was
govern
lost.
itself.
But
But it's also there as a check and balance so that, well, oh my God, what a joke that is.
Harvard's in charter,
Charter County, yeah.
so Harvard
Also, this thing would allow, change it so that you could only hold one office. If you were on the subject committee, you could not hold another office.
There was
Unless you were a delegate.
Yeah.
There was a lot to this bill. I'm just bringing up the basic point that it would have given these guys the power to go in there and take the seat, remove and appoint people as they see fit, along with a couple other things.
Was there a
No
resolution
reason.
at the Maryland GOP convention that basically,
So that
did
we
the
can't
court
have that
put
resolution.
forth a resolution to say that
Yes.
to never allow it, but they can still, those delegates can still ignore the resolution from the, am I right? Or
It's a non-binding resolution.
It's non-binding.
non-binding?
Right.
But it was
But it
voted
was-
on unanimously, right?
Yes, it was.
Basically, it just makes those
Oh, yeah, but
Republicans
the
that vote
Constitution
bill
ain't
look really bad. when The
Yeah.
entire party is against it.
They can still not care less for the next year.
They can still not care less, but it makes it look pretty bad, because if they ever come back and say, hey, look, we need some, funding, we need some money for our elections, they're like, oh, really? Well, look what you did us. So,
That was fun.
but like I said, it was a non-binding resolution, and it was passed unanimously, though, so.
It was really fun being there. Like, I'm on the
Pat
board
was
committee.
there,
right?
So Gordon
Gordon
Bull,
Gordon, yeah.
and a person from Harford County, they got together, melded their bills a little bit. The one from Harford County was like super long, very angry.
Scott DeLong.
And Gordon's,
Scott DeLong from Harford County,
Right.
Campaign for Liberty, introduced a bill too.
and Gordon's was like 5 lines. It was just like, they did this, so we need to say these things. And as soon as it got to the floor, what was it, Al Mendelson from Baltimore County got up and wanted to push it to a unanimous consent. And basically, the chair asked, is there any disagreement to this being approved? And it was quiet, and one guy yelled out, "No!" And then it was done.
But before I turn it over to Elizabeth and her legislative wrap-up, I do want to say that the central committees really are, there's a lot of people in the room running for central committee here tonight. That's really where the work is done to build a party and to find candidates and do all this stuff. The foot soldiers, the people who are very committed to go out there and do the work. And basically, this bill is saying, you don't count. The delegate's going to take over, and we're going to do what we want. And they got shot down, so that's one victory for us, but don't be surprised if this doesn't come back in a non-election year. So, that's all. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And now let me introduce from Maryland Legislative Watch, Elizabeth Myers. And Elizabeth is going to give you the nuts and bolts and numbers and all the rest of the wonderful stuff that went down in the General Assembly this year. So with that, we have Elizabeth Myers. Thank you.
I don't have a lot of statistics, so I'm not going to give you a lot of statistics. They're boring anyway, right? I don't have a lot of statistics, so I'm not going to give you a lot of statistics. They're boring anyway, right? Basically, my talk is this. Larry said, you know, we have multiple seasons. We just had the legislative season. Now we have the election season. The election season for Maryland State is every 4 years. This is a big deal. I'm in Anne Arundel County, and Megan Simonair is running for delegate. Her daddy just happens to be a senator, and she just happens to have been able to raise a lot of money so far to send out a really nice colored mailing. Two-sided colored piece of paper in an envelope, so that's a pretty decent chunk of change. And she was against the raise that the legislators just got, and she wanted to, I'm quoting, give it back to charity. Because apparently that's where the money that they get comes from, right? Charity. So this is somebody running for office whose daddy's in office, he gets thanked all the time for his fiscal conservatism because bond bills are fiscally conservative. And so anyway, and I know I'm on camera, so I'm calling everybody by the right names today. And so so in the legislative season, they have a ton of stuff that they put forth, over 2,700 bills, right? Some are good, some are bad, mostly they're bad. Glenn Glass, for the second year in a row, put out some smart meter legislation. Now, he knows it's going to fail, but he does really try to get this passed. I'm not saying Glenn Glass is the greatest thing, but he is out in front on the smart meters. And he did get a lot of bipartisan support this time. So that's a good thing. So second year in a row on smart meters, and he's gotten a lot more support. Did it pass? No. But he did try. Drones are getting more attention in the legislature, and for a couple of years, actually, the Republicans put forth a drone bill that actually made things worse. They left it so broad that you could abuse drones with no problem. SB 926 and HB 847 actually were put up by Raskin and Rosenberg, and that actually it didn't pass because it's to our benefit, but it actually did make it harder to just use drones willy-nilly on us. This one, I have to say, I don't know what the amendment was. If there was, there was an amendment. I don't know what the amendment was, but there was a bill to add a crime of threat of mass violence to the point where if you threatened to commit or cause to be committed a crime of violence that would place others at substantial risk of death or serious physical injury, and it quotes some code. If the natural and probable consequence of the threat, regardless of whether it actually occurs, you would be, and 5 or more people could be placed in harm or whatever, even if it doesn't occur, you would have to pay for the consequence of that crime. So if somebody reads a Facebook posting where you threaten the school and the SWAT team comes out and raids your house or raids somebody else's house or something like that, then you are forced to pay for the cost of that. And I know, okay, what's the likelihood of a SWAT team overreacting? Okay? So that could never happen. A lot of other things come out, and for instance, cluster, he wanted to make a, go ahead. Well, again, I don't know what the amendments were to this. So I'm reading from the original bill, but it did pass unanimously. This one bill did pass unanimously in both chambers. Again, if you want to research it further, you can research it further. I apologize, I don't have the amendments to that bill.
So the threat bill passed?
The threat of mass violence bill did pass. Yeah, it's actually enrolled in chapter, but again, I don't have the amendment, so you might want to, here, I'll give this to you. You can look.
So you're saying pay for it, do you mean in criminal charges or in paying for the SWAT team?
Paying for the cost of, the government cost.
Okay.
Yeah. I know that my county SWAT budget is over $2 million a year. They're at, last time I looked, it was 1.81 SWAT raids a day. Yeah.
What county is it?
Can we just
And
go
we'll-
back to Jerry?
Yeah, exactly, exactly, yeah.
2 SWAT raids a day.
1.81, yeah.
Probably mostly drugs, right?
Yeah, actually, I did an article on it and I asked some questions and, the police department answered a little over half of them, which was nice.
What else is bomb drugs?
Yeah, Liberty Activists, yeah.
You look,
Okay, so Delegate Cluster proposed to make a double standard for handgun permits, whereas retired police officers would get their permits for longer than just you and me. Again, this did not pass. Another good bill was Senator Schenck. He introduced one to require extensive annual reporting on civil asset forfeiture. Would you raise your hand if you know what civil asset forfeiture is? Okay, so civil asset forfeiture is, in a nutshell, where your things can get taken from you, even if you are not accused of, well, you may be accused of, maybe, but even if you're not charged with or convicted of a crime. Most notably, it's cars. If they pull you over, K9 alerts on your vehicle somehow. And keep in mind that 90% of all cash in this country has drug residue on it. I mean, you can, that's on CNN.com. So if a K9 alerts on your vehicle somewhere and they say, you know, they take your car from you, your Jaguar, your Buick, whatever it is, they can just keep it. They, you know, and it happens all the time, every day. To the point where actually you can look it up. There are cases out there of government versus cash, amounts of cash, $64,000, 32 cents. There are literally, so Senator Schenck actually did propose that we have more reporting on civil asset forfeiture, which would open it up to people because most of the people in this room didn't know that that existed. And again, anything that I'm saying, please look it up because.
That bill passed?
No, it did not. Here's another one that didn't pass, but is disturbing, that it was bipartisan to have employers pay for intern transportation costs. So, you know, if you're commuting as an intern, again, bipartisan. There was a,
Government should be able to dictate terms.
yep. This one as well did not pass, and it was a bill to address authorized uses for automated license plate readers, which we have hundreds of throughout the state. If you see well, it looks like cameras hard mounted, you'll see them on a lot of police vehicles on the trunks. Those are automated license plate readers. There's also one hard mounted on the Beltway, kind of by Essex, 702, somewhere around that exit. You'll see it up on a pole. And so this bill actually, it was a bad bill because unless it says no more automated license plate readers, it's a bad bill. But it actually aimed to restrict maybe some of the uses for automated license plate readers, but there were so many holes in the bill you could drive a truck through it.
Get the license plate of that truck.
And they could get the license plate of the truck and store it, right? All right, so another one that should be near and dear to everybody's heart is that Real ID was introduced into both chambers. Everybody know what Real ID is? Okay. So that was introduced into both chambers, thankfully did not pass. It didn't pass out of committee. And here's a really bad one. HB 116 proposed that police board video cameras. Does that sound great? Yeah, it sounds great.
You want to control the
Exactly. The police, there was nothing in this legislation, okay? It said that it wouldn't include audio. This stuff should protect us, not the police. The aim was absolutely to protect the police. And this was sponsored by a Democrat. It didn't limit the number of days that the recording may be stored. It didn't limit, there was so much stuff that it didn't limit. And again, it gave the cop, it gave the police control over the camera. That's completely against. Food allergy awareness, the food allergy bill, there was a bill that said that restaurants would have to ask customers about food allergies and take certain training. It did pass. Thankfully, though, it died because it was in conference committee. But that bill did get to that point where it needed a conference committee. So let's get to the happy stuff. Well, actually, I mean, so the happy stuff is that, like John said, okay, John read that post about the hidden compartments. And the hidden compartment bill is something that's already law in other states. And it's slowly coming down. I think Ohio was the first one to enact the law. And they got somebody. I mean, they put somebody in prison for, or in jail for it at least. He was held for it. I'm not sure what the outcome was. So the hidden compartment bill is something that John took. He called McDermott out on it. McDermott, after a couple hours of trying to fend for himself, backpedaled and said, oh, you know what, the police just handed me the bill. And I said, okay, I put it in. That's what he did. He wasn't representing anybody except the police. Government said to him, came to him and said, we want more power. And he said, okay, you know, this is what I want to do. But when he was called out on it, and he took heat from people, he withdrew the bill. It took a while, but he withdrew it. So how about if we do that with the rest of these bills? Good for good or bad. We call them out publicly. That is why we posted, I mean, this is a fraction of the bills that we posted on Maryland Legislative Watch this session. So if people would just take 3 bills, even 3 bills a session, and do what John did, what kind of an outcome do you think there would be? Because these people are now publicly, John has, what, 1,500 Facebook friends, McDermott has however many people are going to, go ahead.
If I could real quick, Elizabeth said McDermott was handed that bill. He is currently a delegate on the Lower Eastern Shore right now. He wants to run for a vacant state Senate seat next year. And the reason he took this bill is because the FOP wanted him to take this bill on, and they were going to give him the endorsement for backing this bill. So that's just a little background on that bill. But
He also put in a bill to say that police were exempted from tinted window laws.
Tinted windows.
And he got a bunch of, backlash about that. Nowhere near what he did on that. But if we start giving them this backlash during the legislative season and causing them pain, then we can get something accomplished. But we have to actually do it and not just kvetch and moan. Yes?
McDermott is considered one of the better liberty-minded more so than most delegates.
It's considered that, yeah. You said
Considered
that, yeah.
Many people look at him as a good guy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there are some delegates and senators out there that a lot of the other party people look to for certain things, and McDermott is one of those. So that's all hearsay. So we've just shown you a very super easy way that come next January, you can actually make a difference. It really won't take much. It took a few hours of kvetching and moaning on Facebook, so you can actually kvetch and moan on Facebook and have an effect. Isn't that awesome? Yes.
Are you able to track how many people actually logged on and how you filled up your email to And how many people actually jump on and send?
I don't have,
You know what I mean?
there are a couple reasons why I can't answer the question. First is that I don't track that way. I don't have, because I'm a privacy person, I don't track, you don't use there's not a server that you're using in order to mail. You're clicking on a link. So we do have how many people clicked on the links, although our stats,
But you don't know
we
how many
believe
people
aren't that
sent,
great.
not like,
We don't know how many people sent, and I also know people who take it and paste in the addresses and send it through there, because I think Microsoft Outlook Exchange or something doesn't like semicolons or doesn't like commas, they want semicolons.
I was just curious how much traffic you got
Right.
on your,
We got traffic certainly, and we got a decent amount of traffic, but we need a whole lot more. We need a lot more. Another bill that, because there was so much heat, there's a homeschooling bill. Senator Jacobs came out with this homeschooling bill, and she proposed a $1,000 tax credit for people who homeschool. And so people are thinking, oh, that's great. Well, most of the people in this room, I think, are saying, yeah, you're asking government for a tax credit. No. There are always strings, and of course there are strings. They just, So one of the things is that the bill actually said the controller, in consultation with the State Department of Education, shall adopt regulations to carry out the provisions of this bill. Okay, so don't you homeschool because you want less government in your kids' lives? So of course, the kids are already subject to COMAR, the kids are subject to COMAR, right? I'm not going to get into the ethics of that, but part of COMAR says that you are to provide regular, thorough instruction in the studies usually taught in the public schools to children of the same age. So if you're teaching your kid, and your kid's smart, and your kid's reading Tolstoy in 9th grade, and the other kids can't even spell Tolstoy in 12th grade, you're breaking the law. And so these people, could have potentially come into your home and told you what you could teach your kids, which is anathema to home government and all that. Well, the homeschoolers got hold of it. I put it up just so that people had an easy link to that committee, and let me tell you, that stat blew up. It blew up, and this bill got withdrawn. It got amended heavily, and then it got withdrawn because it was terrible. So all we need to do is apply that pressure. Now, we're not going to be able to do that in $2,700 a year, but if we keep doing it, on a few % more each year, then we can actually make that difference. And we can actually cause them pain during the election season, during the legislative season, to stop some of this horrible legislation. And so we're not here kvetching about it in May. We're here happy about, hey, look at what we're able to accomplish. So going into the election season, all right, we have the voting records for every single delegate and senator from 2005 through 2014 by delegate, by senator, online on MarylandLegislativeWatch.com. Every single record is there. You want to know how your person voted? It's online. We have it. It's not available through the state website. It's only available per bill. So if you want to know how they vote on a bill, go to that bill on the state website. But if you want to know how your legislator, I'm not going to call him representative, voted, you go to MarylandLegislativeWatch.com. You click on the year, you click on the link, special session, regular session. Our IT team has worked its butt off getting this stuff together. It's for the election season. Please use it, okay? Please hold them accountable for the votes. The primary is June 24th? Okay. So the primary is June 24th. You have a little bit of time, but not much, to get out there and say, hey, listen, this is how such and such voted. Look at all these yays. And speaking of yays, as they talked about, we now have new reports that just got published, and our IT team, again, has worked their butt off trying to get these together, common votes, okay, so the barometer is gonna be the majority leader. The barometer in the House is gonna be Bush, and in the Senate is gonna be Miller. And how your legislator voted with Bush and with Miller. The first page and a half, and this goes by percentage, the first page and a half is 100%. So like John said, these people just stay home. And that's followed by another page, another half a page of 99.88%, right? And the best ones out of all this, yeah, of course Democrats are going to vote, Democrats are going to have higher percentages, but the best one out of all this in the House, want to guess?
75%.
78.64. And that's the guy who introduces a whole bunch of 10th Amendment legislation that gets shot down. That he knows nothing he puts in is going to pass. He actually gave some to Schmiegel, that's Dwyer. He gave some to Schmiegel, and Schmiegel took it so that it might possibly get some more traction, yes.
There's also a version of the report that compares, instead of just comparing with Bush and Miller, the version that compares how the Republicans did. So you have Kipke and Brinkley. So how often did the Republicans vote with their leader? So you can actually, and this is, we have it for both 2013 and 2014. So 2013, you're looking at O'Donnell in the House, and 2014, you're looking at Kipke. Again, you're looking at Kipke and Brinkley. So you can actually make a judgment who was a better leader of their own party. How often did the Republicans vote with their majority leader or the minority leader of their party? So you can do some data analysis here, and you will find out that we were better in 2013 than 14. But I'm not trying to make a judgment call.
They were more like-minded.
They were more like-minded in 2013
Yes.
than they were in 14.
In the Senate, do you want to take a guess as to the Senate, the lowest amount of voting like Miller? Percentage-wise?
Right.
91.91.
Oh, wow. So even the Republicans, the best Republicans voted
In the Senate.
91% of the time with the Democrats.
In the Senate. So, did we need all those laws? Did we need all those, I'm not saying that every one of these stole our sustenance and oppressed us, but did we need? Yeah.
So there's a serious problem. Now, why can the Republicans get away with voting 90+% of the time?
Because
When
what I
who are
just said
supposed to be our
when I just said 5 minutes
opposition.
ago isn't happening, is that we are not holding their feet to the fire. We kvetch on Facebook.
How can they do that, though?
Why don't you ask them?
You know when the last
How
time?
can they?
You're asking me,
Like
don't ask
personally,
me.
internally, like how can I justify it?
This information was just
Right.
published
Yeah.
today.
With your
They know before
yeah.
how often you vote
Opposed.
together.
I,
They don't
when I go to
They don't care.
I'll use his name, Brogy, for example.
They do not.
I can go to him and I can see how he voted on specific bills.
No, I ask you to go to the state
Yeah, I go to the state
website
site.
for the bills.
No, they're just
Mhm.
voting.
But if you want to see how Broach vote overall in a year, then, yeah,
All
use
the
this,
eligible
you would have
voters is how
basically
you-
like this, you
Okay.
would have basically the bill information and Broach's vote on it. And you would also have like, if it passed 134-0, or, or if there was opposition on it. But yeah, you would go, for each bill, you would go to the state website. For each legislator, you would go to.
Cool.
Yeah, but so instead of asking me, ask the legislator, because that's the only way it's going to work.
Ask ourselves, what probably voted for.
What was the opposition party?
We did.
Right.
What
Voted for
opposition?
Susie Home.
But again, you have one vote, but if you try to make your voice heard, that can be amplified, obviously, to a great magnitude where you can make a difference. Not saying not to vote at all. I vote. I'm one of those super voters, but you also need to make your voice heard.
You have to realize that these delegates and senators they live in a crisis management world. So that while there's only 10 or 12 people that John garnered to help him out, arguing on Facebook, they don't, since it was a crisis of the moment, they reacted. Now, if their office got 10 phone calls over a month on this, they wouldn't have cared.
Another
But
thing.
because this was all happening on the internet, and right now, he panicked. Let's make him panic.
Another nifty thing was that there were a couple people running for office who came out and had some opinions on this. So you can also see, from what John did, I know that Loveless was one. I think there was another one who came out and were like, "Hey, this is a terrible bill. I just read it."
Carmen Amadori.
Okay, so I just read it, and so you can also see who your true political allies are from stuff like that, because they're willing to make their opinions known. So there are a lot of things that can come out of calling these people out publicly. I called out last year because I wasn't getting any answers to all the emails I was sending to one of my legislators. I called him out, I tagged him in a note on Facebook and said, "I'm not getting any responses." Within 20 minutes, he responded to me on Facebook and said, yeah, I'll answer you. When? Oh, well, after session, no. No, that I don't care after session what your opinion is on these bills. And over the next hour and a half, I got 25 email responses. And I actually got another one of my legislators told me to my face, unfortunately my only witness is my husband, that it was a waste of time to answer more than one or two emails from one constituent in a session. It was, I'm sorry, not a waste of time, waste of my office's resources. So, you find out a lot about these people.
A delegate Shu, that we won't mention his name.
Yeah, I would never do that.
I got into an argument with him on that, 'cause I was good.
Is running for county executive now. And like you said, they I'm not gonna say move up, but they change to bigger offices. So, anybody have any questions? Any more comments? Questions? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. So on what you just said, it's groups, right? Yeah. So you just said how you put them in sort of crisis mode when people are emailing them in a coordinated fashion. I've sent emails out through the site, but I didn't really know if I was sending them when other people were sending them or not. If I was just a lone voice out there.
Well,
And so if there's a way to possibly, with all the people that are on your emailing list that are reading the bills, to coordinate times when we do that.
did you? I work.
Yeah.
Did you tell people?
Yeah.
Okay. That's all we can ask is that you send something and you spread the word.
The individual response sounds like
Okay.
it sounds random.
How
The website, first of all, we don't want to capture everybody's information.
Yeah.
We're big on that. What John did didn't happen via email. He did it via Facebook post and tag somebody.
Yeah.
That's how that reaction happened. I get reaction from emails from delegates that I send to. And when I don't get an answer, I usually go back and ask for more, why. Like, we've gotten emails back, "I'll answer you after session." Oh. Why bother? I don't care what I'm gonna know by then how you voted. There's no way to coordinate an effort to say, let's get these 20 people to ping us right now, unless you get yourself together with 20 people and say, okay, that's in the next 10 minutes, send these emails. But that's not gonna really matter that much, because they don't read the email initially, their staff does.
Well, regardless though, Delegate Schmiegel said on the air on WBAL that he said the number 14. If 14 people email him, you've heard this before, 14 people email a committee, and that's what the website does. When you hit that email button, you're emailing the House or the Senate committee. When 14 people email about the same bill, they come out saying like, hey, what the heck? Because we usually don't get any email. We get email on minimum wage, we get email on gun control. We get email on about 5 bills a session, maybe 10 because we have businesses and whatever. So we get this. We don't get email on the other, thousands some that come across our desk. And I think I looked at last session, and they took about 900 votes last session, and what, about 1,000 votes this session? Each.
1,022 in the Senate, 1,010.
Right, right. So there's a lot of bills that they're voting on, whether it be in committee or on the floor, and those are floor votes. You know, so you really do need to email them. Of course, you don't want it to come out of committee, but again, it needs to be a grassroots thing. You tell your friends and just hope they're doing it.
It has to happen while it's in committee, because if it happens once on the floor, it's already closed.
And the answer is you don't know. You don't know, if it's making a difference, and you don't. You just have to do it.
It could be a little overwhelming because I was on it and I was like, whoa. I mean, it is, but that's all right.
Yeah.
You know.
It's a frustration event too. You can vent that way.
Yeah, just try to be as the president,
Professional troll.
as the president of Campaign for Liberty, Ron Paul says, always be respectful. I don't know how he could do it, but he did.
Hey, Elizabeth, going back to the HB 1513, the Harford County Central Committee bill, last year also, or the year before, with the Charles County with the home inspection. Yeah, and that, if you can kind of give us a little edification, how these counties all put bills out and the other counties all have like this gentleman's agreement that they all vote for them. If you can kind of touch on that just a little bit to let people know that really these, like, it's a bad bill and everybody else knows about it, but the other 23 jurisdictions, because they don't want this county to vote their bills down, they just have a working agreement that they'll pass each other's bills.
Well, most of the time they don't think it's a bad bill. Now, this one, the Central Committee bill, obviously, that was a hot button issue. Emergency Central Committee legislation, just obviously on its face, is an issue. There was a bill, as John said last session, that I don't think anybody thought was bad, where it said that Charles County code inspectors may, I don't have it in front of me, but basically they can abate a violation of the building code. And abate means, in government speak, to fix or cause to have fixed. And that creates, on its face, if that's part of the code now, that creates a whole new set of problems. I presented that to a Republican club, and they're like, you have to look at the intent. I'm like, I'm completely flummoxed as to why you think that I need to look at the intent of a bill when the language is so plain. Is that what the code inspector is going to do? Oh, hey boss, let me look at the intent of this. Let's go look at the intent before I do anything. There's no intent. How's the Second Amendment working for you? It's not. How's the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Third pretty soon? How's the Sixth Amendment working for you? Been to the airport lately?
But in Charles County, they can now cite you for a problem, cause it to be fixed. They can call their friend in to fix your leaky hose for $1,000, and the bill goes on your tax bill. Not, it doesn't.
Your property tax, right.
It goes on your property tax bill.
By the letter of the law.
Pay it, they can seize your property.
By the letter of the law, they can do that now. I'm not saying they're doing it, but I'm saying by the letter of the law, they can do it. And that passed unanimously because it's a county bill, because Charles is a commissioner county, and that's how they have to pass legislation, and that's what Charles County wanted, and they said, sure, no problem. Carroll County, I think it was Garrett County, the $30 million for a hospital, with not that many beds, and just on and on and on. Bond, yes, please go into bond debt, Garrett County, because you want bond debt. These are the kind of things that pass unanimously or nearly unanimously, because, like John said, there's a gentleman's agreement.
It's considered rude to vote against another county.
Anne Arundel County College now has, or whenever it becomes effective, will now have police that are not just, they're not just writing, yeah, they have police powers on campus now. And pensions, because that's what every government needs, is more pensions.
I'd like to know how many police forces there are in existence in Maryland.
There's actually a lot. The Anne Arundel County Community College would not be the first school.
Oh, no, no.
Yeah,
There's an environmental police, Baltimore environmental police.
Yeah, I keep seeing DNR cops, you know.
DNR cops walk around with ARs.
Yeah.
Pretty soon school crossing guards will have resources.
They do
Well,
work
get
for
away
the
from
because
pretty
the
well.
cops. It's actual policemen.
Get away with it, or park rangers in terms of police force.
Thank you very much. All right. Gonna wrap up. How we do it is one little piece at a time. You know, you have people like Bruce and Elizabeth that are putting their time and resources into developing Maryland Legislative Watch so that citizens can go out and check on these legislators. And when they're doing wrong, we can hold them accountable. It's organizations like Campaign for Liberty and other organizations that are out there fighting for, you know, either issue-specific items or like what we are, we're just looking for liberty in general across the board. And the key to this is it's got to be a building movement. You've got to talk to people. You got to share the ideas. You need to, you know, it's like, it's crazy. You think about it, it's like religion and politics are two faux pas. You just don't ever bring them up. That's crazy. Why is that? That's stupid. Those are the two most important things you need to be bringing up. Like
The reason we do things and how we do them.
Like, what's weird is that they've created that culture here. It didn't used to be that way. I have friends from other countries, and that's really odd to them. They can have a very different debate where they have very opposing views. You can debate it out, and we're still friends at the end of the day. Here, you feel like you're walking on eggshells all the time. You're stepping on people's toes, and they're getting all offended. Like, we got to get over ourselves. We need to have serious discussion. So go out there and step on people's toes. So, thanks, Scott. You know, it's amazing to me the statistics that Elizabeth shared. The best Republican in the House, or best anyone that voted against the House Majority Leader, was 78.64%, in line with the House Majority Leader. And then the Senate was 91.91% of the time. There's not two parties. Now, I would expect that to be high if they were in the same party.
Right. By the way, there are Democrats, sorry, there are Republicans that voted more with Bush
than Democrats.
than Democrats.
So I think that proves here that we don't have two parties. And that's the reason why Maryland is such a bad situation. Which is the reason why I was so fired up about HB 1513. Because here we have liberty people that are stand on principle, trying to get involved in the party. And the establishment people that are in the party are trying to lock them out. They don't want change. They put out these nice emailers about how they're standing up for you in this horrible liberal state. And yet they're voting for them, with them, 80% of the time plus. And locking out people that truly do want to impose change in our state. It's a sad state of affairs. The problem is we need more people to get involved. Talk to people. Get them involved. Share Maryland Legislative Watch's website. Talk to them about coming to meetings. Get involved in activism. You know, 14 emails is not a lot of emails to raise a flag to a representative. It's staggering that they don't get 14 emails on an issue. It doesn't take a lot of numbers to influence change. And that's at the state level. It'd take even less at the county level. These county council members, they probably never hear from constituents. Never. We'd take one stupid vote where they decide to sell $30 million worth of bonds, and we could bury that with a small group like this. So we just need to get active. We don't have anybody tracking council, Baltimore County Council. We need more people involved to do stuff like that. A couple other things. We have there's a political activist training that really explains what we do and how we do it, coming up this Saturday. It's May 10th. If you're interested in that, please come up and see me. It's $35. It's from 9 to 5 at our Budas Library. I'll have to get your information and get you directed to the website where you can get tickets. But it's excellent. It really teaches the fundamentals of what we do. Then there's also a spring picnic coming up. Maryland Liberty PAC, I think, is putting together a spring picnic on May 25th. They're selling tickets for that. They're going to have a guest speaker. I think it's at Oregon Ridge Park. It's Sunday, May 25th. Our next meeting is here June 4th. I think we're going to be focusing on gun issues. with the upcoming legislative session, or the election, the gun issue is huge in Maryland. There are a ton of people out there that strongly oppose these gun grabs that politicians are doing. So we think this will be a hot topic for an election season. And then we also have a resource table up here with excellent books. Please take a look at those, and then we'll all hit Chili's afterwards. So feel free to stick around and chat, hang out. Thank you. See you next month.